Evening. Okay, welcome to the Eton Academy's webinar on how to get your children to focus better, right? Thank you for taking the time to be with us. My name is Hugh, right? And with me this evening, we have Miss Natasha, who's an experienced early years educator. Now, she teaches English now, not only to early years children, but also across multiple age groups from the very young to even teenagers, right? So Ms. Natasha is going to be sharing her expertise with us this evening. And of course, we're also very privileged to have Miss Phoebe, a very popular early years to primary school maths teacher. And she is also going to share her experience and expertise with us this evening, right? I'm sure their valuable insights will really add value to tonight's discussion, okay? Right, so great. Let's just get into it right now, okay? So as parents and educators, okay, we know that children are naturally curious beings who are always very eager to explore the world around them, right? So let me just ask this question to Ms. Natasha first. Many parents wonder, right? In this world filled with so many distractions, right? How can we ensure that our children stay engaged?
Okay, so let me talk about our experience in the classroom, okay? And then later on, Miss Phoebe and I will actually also walk you through how we can also use the same strategies at home as parents to engage the children and to help them to focus better. Okay, so in the classroom, we use a lot of what we call prompts and stimuli. All right, so prompts, what are prompts? Basically, they are catalysts for inquiry. It's to help encourage your children to want to learn more. Okay, so basically, we want to encourage that sort of thinking, the love for learning, and to keep them curious so that they will stay engaged and stay focused. All right. So the first way that we do that in our classrooms is to ask targeted questions, open-ended questions to capture their attention. Okay, so for example, Miss Phoebe and I will actually be showing you certain examples of what we do in our classroom. So examples of the journals that we actually use in our classroom as well. Okay, so this storybook is titled Margaret and the Moon. It's about Margaret Hamilton, a software engineer who helped the astronauts land on the moon in 1969. Okay, so before we even start reading the story, we start asking questions like, oh, how do you think astronauts can travel to space? Okay, and what we're doing here is we're tapping on students' prior knowledge. Okay, so very obvious, the answer is spacecraft or rocket. And these words are within students' prior knowledge, so they'll be able to give us that answer. But then we want to provoke them to think a little bit more. So we'll start to ask them questions like, oh, but how does the spacecraft know where to go? Or things like, oh, who's actually building any other jobs that actually are important to help the astronauts get to space. Okay, so all of these questions, what they do is to guide the students to frame their learning for the day and to also basically invoke curiosity in them, get them more interested to find out more. Okay, so every time we have this element of interest, of engagement, I think parents, you would know, naturally children will be more focused. Okay, so all of these together, as we increase their engagement with the theme and the book, then we help them to focus better in our classroom.
Well, you mentioned about space exploration. This sounds like such an adult topic. I guess some parents might be wondering, what if my child doesn't know anything about the moon landing? How would you introduce this kind of topic to them then?
Okay, so at this point, I'll talk about something a little bit different. It doesn't always have to be about space exploration and things like that, right? So we also make use of things like manipulatives in the classroom. So what happens is we actually provide children with tangible things that they can hold, they can interact with, they can observe, to just hook them, to get their interest first. Okay, so in this context, the pictures that I'm showing you is about traditional dishes. So we presented the K1s with a variety of ingredients that they were able to smell, observe, look at, touch, and if they want to, they can even taste a little bit, okay, after we've checked with the parents, all right? Yeah, so basically what this does is it's very novel, it's very interesting. So again, interesting, you hook their attention, they're very focused, all right? And in the classroom context, all of these manipulatives that we them as teachers, it helps us to scaffold the lesson. Okay, so it ensures that it frames the learning for the students. They are not too overwhelmed if they know what's coming, what they're learning for the day. Sometimes it even helps to extend what they're going to learn for the day. So for example, in this particular lesson, right? So the spice is smelling is actually turmeric. Okay, so some of the other kids, they weren't too aware of the words. And so she actually had the opportunity to share a little bit more about how her auntie at home uses turmeric to fry chicken and to season that chicken, basically. Yeah, so it really helps to extend all the students' learning in the classroom just by including something to incite their thinking, like something like a small little spice bag. Okay, and I think what else all these prompts, these questions, and these manipulators do, they also help to bring the lesson alive for students, right? So these are things that they can see in the household, it's a part of their lives. I think that this way it really helps to engage them even more.
I think the approach of using storytelling is excellent, and I think it's something that we do that very often in our math curriculum as well. So in math, we employ similar strategies to ignite interest in the subject. Okay, so over here, you can see some of the math books that we use in the classroom. So surprisingly, I think a lot of parents don't know that there are books catered to math topics. Essentially, these books cover various concepts like money, shapes, time, measurement like your length, your mass, your volume, and even basic operations like addition and subtraction. And introducing this narrative tends to energize the students and simplify very complex topics into more digestible components.
Okay, hang on, Miss Vivi, hang on. You're saying that reading storybooks is also done in maths class. I mean, I thought that's totally an English class thing, right? So there are math storybooks as well?
Of course, okay. So for parents who are interested to find out more of the type of books we use in the classroom, I've provided a QR code at the bottom right corner. You can scan the QR code and access the books that we use in the classroom. So these are a good place to start. So you cultivate the love for reading and you also expose them to math concepts. I think that's a win-win for both literacy and numeracy.
Cool.
So another way of using prompts and stimuli is through using thought-provoking manipulative. So when we conduct an activity in the classroom, there's often a clear learning objective. So for instance, in this particular class, I brought a pen balance and also a weighing scale into the classroom. So this immediately grabs their attention and they start to think about where they have encountered such manipulative and how they can utilize it. So in a less structured environment, so if they do see this in a supermarket or at home, generally the students will want to experiment with it. They will put random objects, be it their pencil case, their water bottle, and then they will see how the tool responds. So a lot of this activities that they do is really for amusement. Okay, so once the interest waned, you will realize that they may not want to engage with all this manipulative as much. So to truly engage them, apart from the use of such thought-provoking manipulative, it is important to also add in open-ended prompts. So quite similar to what Natasha said earlier on, it's about asking them what would happen if I change this to that? Why do you think that happened? I think these questions stimulate their critical thinking, and then they engage deeper with the tool, and you can see that they understand the math concept much better.
Okay, right. So having these clear, thought out objectives and purposeful stimuli can be seen definitely in the classroom. But how can this sort of learning actually happen at home? So basically what I'm asking is, how can parents incorporate prompts and stimuli at home to encourage better attention spans?
Okay, my advice to parents always is to keep it simple. Okay, so I know parents are really busy with work, lots and a million other things. So
Yeah.
keep it simple. Don't stress yourself out. Okay. So what Phoebe and I mentioned earlier, like the prompts and stimuli, actually these are actually really easily replicated at home. Okay. So similar to what we do in the classroom, right? We can ask them open-ended questions. You guys can ask them open-ended questions at home as well. Okay, so these open-ended questions, remember the objective is to basically encourage critical thinking, critical discussion, and to get them more curious. Okay, so something really simple, very low effort, minimal prep. Okay, is to get them when they're reading storybooks. Okay, ask them, oh, imagine, if you are a character in that storybook, how would you feel? Can you draw it out? Or if you are a character in the book, what would you do differently? Things like that, open-ended questions, like Miss Phoebe said, things that actually get them thinking, questions that get them thinking.
So,
Okay,
Ms.
and all,
you're saying something like, how would you feel, or why do you think the character did this, something like that?
Yeah, so those type of questions.
Okay.
And okay, just to sidetrack a little bit, yeah. So these type of inference questions are also very good for like preparing students for primary one. When they go on to primary one, they need to do comprehension passages that might ask them, oh, how do you think the character feels? And how do you know? Right? So all of this it also builds up to that. All right. So again, minimal prep, all you need, drawing block, color pencils, and then give your child like 10 minutes on their own. So, you create some time for yourself as well. Okay, another way that parents can include prompts and stimuli is to incorporate daily activities, daily items, okay, as part of the stimuli for your child. Okay, so let's say your child really likes animals. So very easy, you can just arrange for a trip to the zoo, to a farm, to the pet shop, or even just to the park to observe animals and insects around you. Okay, so we want to create experiences, use existing materials, toys, resources that you already have at home, so no need to go and buy more stuff. Okay, and get them to be curious and to engage them. Okay, so I think another thing is that when students realize that, whatever they have read on their storybook, inside the storybook, doesn't end just in the last page, they can see it being applied in the real world. I think that it really helps to engage them. Okay, just one last point. Okay, so I think sometimes parents, you go out with your child and you create all these experiences with them. Sometimes they have questions, and then you don't know how to answer, you don't have the answers for it. I sometimes tell parents as well that, try and be a bit more comfortable with not knowing. So make it a point to show your child, okay, let's learn together. So model that learning with them. And then as the learning process is a bit more collaborative, your child will definitely love spending time with you, right? So then learning becomes engaging, and again, with the engagement, they will be more focused as they learn as well.
I think circling back to Natasha's point on incorporating daily activities, recently I came across an interesting article highlighting a concerning trend. Okay, so over here you can see that the headline says there's an increasing number of Singapore primary school students who can't count cash. All right, so in the article it says that it's not uncommon for primary one students to hand us their whole wallet and expect us to take out the money ourselves. All right, so on the right, you can see another headline saying that more students can use cashless payment in school as Smart Buddy scheme expanded. I think this is an innovative solution to this challenge that we are facing, but it doesn't quite address the root problem that probably students are not very familiar with money these days. Okay, so I think such a report is quite worrying. When I read this as a math teacher, I'm quite worried for my students.
And
Okay,
as a parent, you'll be worried because they're not taking note of how much they're spending. They're just spending, and it's not their money, is
exactly.
it?
Yeah, and you know, when you use cashless transaction, you tend to overspend a lot because you don't know how much money is going out, and you probably also wouldn't know how much money you're left with in the system. Yeah, so going back to the idea of everyday activities, I think parents can consider involving their children on shopping trips to the supermarket. I know many families actually go to the supermarket once a week to stock up supplies to buy their kids' favorite snack. I think this is an excellent way to start getting children interested in how much their favorite snack actually cost. Is it $2? I think with inflation, sometimes it's like $3.50 now. You know, they get to know the idea of dollars and cents when you're just exploring the supermarket. And in the supermarket itself, you get to see digital weighing scales as well. So the idea of mass is also explored in the supermarket. You get to compare maybe the mass of an apple and or broccoli, and you get to talk to them about the themes like heavier, lighter, and things like that. So when it comes to making learning fun, especially for math, it's about letting your children know how relevant math is in the real world. So other things like other themes that we can talk about at home includes the topic of time. So I think as long as your child is 3 and above, they start going to school, right? So when they wake up in the morning, there is a specific routine that they follow. Like they wake up, they brush their teeth, they change, they eat their breakfast. So this is the sequence of event that will actually happen every morning. And as you do a routine card with your child, they actually understand the concept of time a bit better. What are the events that come before and after something? And probably they'll be able to relate things like breakfast to morning, lunch to afternoon, and then dinner to nighttime. Yeah, so these are very important concepts in math. But if I tell them as a teacher, you need to learn this, it's not quite as important, and it's not quite as impactful as parents actually teaching them in their everyday life. Yeah. So these days, I see that kids are very, very good at spending money. You know, they go to a birthday party and then they will tell me how they pick out a gift for their friend. So they understand spending money very well, but in money, we also talk about earning and saving. So these are all the themes that we can explore at home. This will boost their financial literacy skill and eventually their understanding of money. So over time, you will see that the child have interest and also readiness to learn in the classroom. So by making mathematics part of their daily life, we equip students with the skills that will help them everywhere, not just in school. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I just want to make one slight correction to what Miss Phoebe said, right? She said children are very good at spending money. Yeah, spending their parents' money, right? It's not okay. Right. Okay. Anyway, actually, I have a question here from one of the attendees tonight. Maybe Miss Natasha, perhaps you could take this question, right? So the question comes from Brandon, and he's asking, right? When asking a child what if, right? So an open-ended question, yeah. What happens if their answers are not exactly correct, right? So how can we approach that?
Okay, I think first is times there are no, you know, if the objective is to really encourage creativity in your child, right? Technically, you know, his answer, your child's answer is not exactly correct to you as an adult listener, but to a child, maybe that's a very creative side of their mind speaking, and it might make a lot of sense to them. But I understand, you know, sometimes, you know, if they're stuck out there, you know, you want to bring them back a little bit. Okay, what can we do is to ask them a lot more prompting questions. Okay, so I think it sounds like a lot of preparation, but it's really not, it's like having a conversation with somebody. You ask them more prompting questions to see exactly what is their line of thought, and to see how you can get them to veer back to where the more correct answer is. I
Yeah,
think that's what I would do in the classroom.
yeah. Thanks, Ms. Natasha. I was going to say too. Yeah, I mean, sometimes the children in our class, when they come to certain conclusions as well, they might not be accurate, but that's okay, because what we want is for them to be confident enough to express what they think, right, without making them feel like, oh, they're going to say something wrong. So that's another part of it. And like what Ms. Natasha said, sometimes you can actually lead them to the area on which the answer would be more accurate, right? So again, depending on the question, of course, it all depends on the context. Yeah, but yeah, these are the things that we would probably do, right? So I hope that answered your question. All right. Right. Okay. So
just to add on, Mr. Hugh. So I think another thing that I try to do in my classroom also, if let's say a child has given me a very obviously wrong answer, sometimes children like big reactions, right? So, but not negative reactions. So I would just be really dramatic. I'd be like, what? That kind of thing, like, dramatize it a little bit and be like, oh my goodness, how can it be like that? That kind of reaction. Sometimes, it gets them, it lightens up the mood so that they know, like, hey, okay, maybe can I tweak my thinking a little bit, and then, from there, you ask them the prompting questions again. It's all about making it fun for them, basically. They're really young. So.
All right, thanks a lot. Sorry, going back to what Miss Phoebe was talking about earlier. She was talking about, extending everyday activities to show how maths is actually a very important life skill. Yeah. Now, I'm going to go to my pet subject, which is English here, right? What about teaching boring, grammar rules and things like that? Is there a way that, parents can actually help their child prepare, especially if they're going into primary school, get them prepared for, all these things like learning the different grammar rules and, making it more fun for them?
Yeah, so that's actually a really common question from a lot of K2 parents. They're worried about the transition to primary one. Again, people know that, grammar rules sometimes are a little bit abstract. They are sometimes a little bit hard to learn as well. So like what you said, Mr. Hugh, making it fun, right? How to make it fun for them. As long as you can make it fun, any type of fun, okay, they will learn better. Okay, so how do we do it in the classroom? And stimuli that we talked about earlier. Okay, so we can engage in a lot of manipulatives to exemplify grammar concepts. So for example, like singular and plural nouns, right? So what I would do in my class, I teach a lot of single items in one group and a lot of multiple items in another group. And then I get students to observe and make some conclusions, draw some conclusions about what they think is the grouping like. And then from there, we can add on, we can tell them, we can show them that, okay, this is what singular means, and this is what plural means. And then from there, we extend it even further. So we can say, okay, now it's your turn. So every time they get to do something, it's very fun for them. So I'll say, okay, now it's your turn. Can you group items, singular items here, plural items there? And then they get to play around using all these different manipulators in the classroom. And it really helps them to visualize and then learn the concept.
Right. So when they visualize, I suppose their focus will improve, right, Ms. Natasha?
Yes, I think that there are many different types of learners at this young age. So visual learners definitely will be able to learn better with this type of visually presented ideas. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that, you have to get them involved and curious in their learning, right? So that will definitely help with engagement. Now, is that why I always see Miss Phoebe's students busy moving around the classroom, looking for things? It's as if they're on some kind of adventure.
You're very observant, Mr. Hugh. I think my students are doing a lot of different fun activities in their learning. And I think this is very in line with what I believe, that learning can be fun when we use interesting ways to teach. So the outcome that we want to achieve in the classroom is often the same. We want them to be able to count, to add, to be able to focus, to practice. But sometimes it can be a bit challenging for students, especially at the age of 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. Yeah, so sometimes I like to hide things in the classroom for students to find, like a treasure hunt. And then we will count them together as we tally up our findings. Then, through the process of counting, we will ask each other questions like, oh, who has the most number of items? Who has the least? You use all these key terms in your questioning in very dramatic way of expression, like what Miss Natasha was sharing just now. They tend to remember these things a lot better. Yeah, so other times we play hopscotch game. So in our classroom, there's this hopscotch on the floor. So every time when they go to the toilet, they like to jump on the numbers. And then I'll get them to shout out the numbers as they jump for them to count forward and count backwards. So you can see that across all these activities, be it the treasure hunt or the hopscotch game, the goal is the same. Is for them to get better at counting. Okay, but we change the way we do it because this novelty keeps them paying attention to learning how to count. Yeah, so when we have 4 or 5 years old in the classroom, you can see that they get a bit more fidgety towards the end of the class. So by adding on these elements in the classroom, I can encourage them to actually finish their task, to concentrate, and to develop that stamina of perseverance in the classroom. Yeah, so to put things into context, our N2 classes run for 1 hour and 30 minutes, while our K1 classes last for 1 hour and 45 minutes. So considering children's attention span, which typically lasts between 15 to 20 minutes, we have to structure our lesson accordingly. So usually we start off with an engaging activity, be it like storytelling, exploration, to capture their interest. And then we usually have a brief writing activity. So then midway through class, we introduce a game or to re-energize the young learners. Then after that, they will go for a short toilet break before returning to complete their practice again. So in this 1 hour, 30 minutes and 1 hour, 45 minutes, we are also mindful in prioritizing the element of developing the child's voice. So with everything that they have gathered through our exploration or provocation, students then can articulate their thoughts with greater confidence and clarity, because we recognize that it is important for students to learn how to speak up. It is an important children development and also a key focus among parents. So this is something we're very mindful in nurturing in the classroom. Yeah, so by seeing the class in small segments, you can see that students actually follow through much better. So over time, their concentration and attention span will improve, allowing us to actually have deeper discussion in the classroom.
Okay, yeah, that sounds very interesting. What happens in your classroom, and that's also why I suppose I see your kids always, smiling as they leave your classroom. Yeah. Okay, I have a question for Miss Natasha, right? So I'm sure parents have heard this before, like reading helps develop language ability. I mean, you've probably heard that right when you were a student yourself as parents, as when we were students ourselves, and teachers always say that read, right? But of course, the problem is getting children interested in reading. Yeah. So how can parents encourage a reading habit in their children?
Okay, so always play to your advantage. You need to build yourself up for success as well. So first thing I would tell parents is to pick books that reflect the themes that your child is already interested in. Okay, so if they like dinosaurs, then you should choose books that feature dinosaur characters, things like that. Okay, so half the battle is won when they are really interested in the topic. All right. The other thing is that, very, very common, younger children, they're more enticed by colorful, captivating illustrations. So do choose books that are like that as well. So these are some of the examples of the books that we use in our classroom. So you can see very colorful, very nice illustrations as well. And the next thing I would say is to not overwhelm your child. So how do we do that? We need to choose books that are age appropriate and also ability appropriate. Okay, so what happens is I think even as adults, we know that if we receive something that is way too challenging, naturally we are not very engaged by it, right? So as young children, we need to be mindful of that as well. For our young children to choose books that, include words that they know or are learning in school, include words that are decodable so that they can read it independently. Okay, and all these books should support your child's literary skills, abilities, basically. Okay, so yes, it means a little bit of work for parents to look through the book beforehand. Okay, but I think it won't take so much time, right? And another thing that I tell parents is that, children, they are all really different. They all learn very differently. Like we talked about earlier, some children are a bit more visual, they're visual learners. Let's say your child is a bit more auditory. They like music, they like rhythm. Try to choose books that reflect the type of rhyming patterns. Or if you want, you can make a book into a song as well. Just try and incorporate some musical elements to it. Okay, if they like acting, they like drawing, you can also engage them. So if your child is very dramatic, you can tell them to act out a scene. Think of an alternate ending and act it out, or think of an alternate ending and draw it out. Okay, so it's all about engaging them to get their focus. Okay. One more thing that I would say is earlier, we mentioned if the child sees that what they are learning, what they are reading, doesn't just stop in the storybook, doesn't just stop in the classroom, then they are a little bit more engaged, right? So let's say, they're reading a story about pollution, you can get them to think about, okay, what can you do in your life to reduce pollution? And then you can get them to actually go out and pick up rubbish, start recycling drives and things like that. If they are learning about food and nutrition, like we talked about earlier, then get them in the kitchen, or bring them to the supermarket, like what Miss Phoebe said, so that they see firsthand how to apply all these things about nutrition that they have learned. Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about reading, right? But what about the other side of the coin, which is writing, right? What can parents do to get their children more interested in writing?
Okay, maybe I can take this question.
All right, yeah.
Okay, so as a teacher, I'm always very grateful for parents who take an active role in their child's learning, especially when it comes to starting them on writing early. It really helps them to be more prepared for the classroom. But I also know that not a lot of children actually like to write. Okay, so let's start off with the environment that they are learning. Okay, so I think the learning environment is key to a child's focus. So I suggest parents, you can pay attention to how you decorate your home, starting with creating a fun learning space. I think collaborating with your child to decorate this space is very impactful because they feel like they are part of creating a environment that they can learn. So they can start with, or you can start with picking out suitable tables and chairs, decorating the area with their favorite school supplies. Children come into the classroom and tell me that they bought the latest colorful pencil and then they want to use it in the classroom. Usually I will let them use it because it helps them and encourage them to write more. Yeah, so as a reward for completing tasks, children could also earn their favorite stickers. I often receive requests from my students to have more Pokemon stickers or unicorn stickers, and they can't wait to finish their journal to actually earn the stickers on their journal. So this is a little bit of a collaboration we do in the classroom, and I believe such collaboration can happen a lot more at home as well. So another way to encourage the children to want or desire to write a bit more is to tap on their imaginative mind. So we know for the 4, 5, 6 years old, they are very, very creative. They like to look at pictures and characters. And I think it's also because they like to imagine different scenes in their head. And in our curriculum here, for example, if I'm teaching them a very I would say, mundane topic like parts and whole, they will probably feel like, I don't understand what this teacher is talking about. But in our journal, you can see this Rolly the robot over here. So basically, he is a character that we use in the classroom, and he has a very distinct persona. So Rolly the robot loves to eat. So you can see that he's holding a handful of sweets on one hand, and then on the other hand, he has another handful of sweets. So you see a part of his hand with 3 sweets and the other part with two sweets. Because he loves to eat, all these candies will go into his stomach, right? So this forms the whole. So they understand the concept of whole as numbers combining together. And they also remember parts as numbers being separated. So with all these vivid characters that we have in the classroom, the students remember it way better. Yeah, so tapping into their creativity helps them to be more interested in learning, writing, and also practicing.
Right. Thanks for that, Miss Phoebe. I have another question here asked by one of our attendees. Okay, so this is he said this person says his or her child will be in P1 next year. All right. So what can he or she do to prepare him in terms of focusing, especially since they would probably have to do more seat work? I mean, Miss Natasha or Miss Phoebe, whoever wants to take this one.
I can go first. So I do have a few K2 students P1 classes, right? So what I do when it comes to preparing them for the class, and as Phoebe and as Miss Phoebe said, our classes can be quite lengthy, an hour, 45 minutes long for K2 and P1. So how do I prepare them? What I do is I don't want to shock them, So I try and give them an idea of what we're going to do today, and I break it up into portions. So I'll tell them, I'll draw on the board. Okay, there are 3 circles that we need to complete today. Okay, maybe first circle is going to be a comprehension exercise. Second circle is going to be grammar exercise, and the last circle is going to be a vocabulary exercise. So as we go through the class, the students know what to expect. They're not shocked. It actually builds that expectation, and they will be more likely to be willing to sit through the entire class. So as we go through the lesson, I will go and draw a smiley face inside the circle. And then as we finish the other components, then I'll draw smiley faces as well. So, they're not shocked. They know what to expect. I feel that it really helps them mentally prepare themselves for that type of lengthy classroom sessions. Yeah.
Okay. I think trying to cultivate a child's inner dialogue is also very important in the classroom. So as they attend a class, or maybe at home, you have a routine that they follow. At the start, when the child is not familiar or comfortable with sitting for a prolonged period of time, they will negotiate. They'll say, when will we be done? Can I just do one more page? Okay, so children will negotiate how much work they need to do. And I think that's a very brilliant move. Okay, so usually at the start, I will tell them clear expectation. Okay, once you finish another 4 more pages, that's it for today. And then they will get rewarded. And of course, the next time when they go through the same routine, they sit and then they open up their assessment books or journals. This time you may tell them, okay, today we're gonna do until 6 pages later. Yeah, so maybe because the first time when they were doing it, when they were practicing, they were only doing 4 pages. So by the time they reach the 5th and 6th page, they'll get tired, and then they will feel like they don't want to do it anymore. So I think this is when parents play a very important role in trying to nurture their inner dialogue. Things like, you can do hard things. It's just a little bit more. And over time, the children can actually soothe themselves in the same way when they meet with challenges in the classroom. It doesn't have to be doing like 10 pages of work. It could be when they see a question and they completely don't know how to tackle it. What do they actually tell themselves? Do they just say, I don't know how to do, I'm gonna skip it, I don't want to do it anymore? Or can they actually reframe their mind and say that, oh, okay, I have seen similar questions before. Oh, I know this keyword. I know what this means. Yeah, so one important aspect that I will get parents to actually focus is to teach them how to persevere on what they can tell themselves to actually develop that resilience.
Okay, thanks a lot, Miss Natasha and Miss Phoebe. I suppose building the stamina is important, right? Before they get into the primary school setting. Yeah, so yeah, like what you guys said, right? Great. Okay, I hope that answered your question, the one who posted the question earlier. Right, let's move on. Are there milestones of literacy at the different age groups? Because, you know, parents might be concerned if their child is on track.
Okay, so I think as the children progress through their early years, they will reach significant milestone in their literacy and numeracy journey. It is important to understand that every child is different and their learning journey is also going to look very different as well. So with that said, there are some general milestones that we can look out for in each age group. So today, Miss Natasha and I will go through some of these general milestones in the context of what we teach and cover in our classroom, and also how we guide, support, and enhance the child's development towards this milestone. Okay, so for math, each term we cover a wide range of topics. So for ease of understanding, I will be focusing on the progression of their number fluency and the concept of comparison for our N2 to K2 learners. Okay, so over here we have a table. Once again, it is a general guideline. Okay, so you see here that generally for N2 learners, they can count and recognize number up to 10. They have the ability to compare objects, more items, fewer items, equal items, and they also develop some interest towards writing. And then as they progress to K1, they can definitely still count, okay, but the numbers they can count up to and recognize will go up to 20 and beyond. They can also compare and order numbers, and they also start developing spatial awareness skill. So things like recognizing your left, right, top, bottom, and things like that. And then in K2, building on the foundations in K1, you can see that they will generally develop mastery over numbers all the way up to 40. They can count forward, count backwards. And sometimes with higher ability children, you can see that they develop the ability to skip count in 2s, 5s, and 10s. They can also engage in problem-solving activity, and they develop stronger spatial awareness skills. Okay. So now let's play a very short game. Okay, this is an activity I do with my 4 years old every week. It's called Remember the Spots. Okay, so I'll be flashing a picture and then I'll be posting some questions for all the participants or the parents to answer. So since we're all adults with much stronger spatial awareness skills, you will only be given 3 seconds to look at the picture. Okay, are we ready?
Right. Yeah.
So get ready. After that, we will run 2 polls. All right. Okay, so at the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, this is the picture. 1, 2, and 3. All right. Okay. I hope you remember the spots. Okay, so starting with our first question, I'm going to run the poll now. Okay, yep. Thank you, Hugh. Okay, so how many spots are there? Oh, very, very fast.
100%. Wonderful.
100%. Okay.
I'm seeing, yeah, 100%.
Very impressed. Okay, so about half of the answers are in. We're waiting just maybe another 3 more seconds for the remaining half to come in. Okay. All right, okay, where are the spots? Ooh, okay. Interesting answers here. Okay.
Yeah, more than
all
one.
Right. Okay, so over here, I can see that most of the participants got this right. So well done. You are as good as our 4 years old. Okay, so you might be wondering about the goal of this activity. Okay, so let's start by asking, did you count the dots one by one, or did you recognize it straight away that it's 3 spots immediately? Okay, so as adults, I think most of us actually recognize it as 3 the moment you see this picture, right? So you acquire an important skill called supertizing, which is the development of number sense. All right, so supertizing refers to the ability to recognize numbers and also objects immediately without actually counting them individually. So children who can identify small quantities in different arrangement, okay, such as those spots on dominoes or dice without actually counting them one by one, have a stronger sense of quantity. Right, so in N2, this is what we are building, the foundational math skills. Okay, so very quickly, I will run through the key points here. Okay, so usually for 4 years old, they are able to count up to 10. Okay, why do we limit it to 10? Is because we are focusing on developing the one-to-one correspondence skill. So as children listen to songs or watch videos, they can actually count all the way up to 20 and so on and so forth. But it doesn't actually mean that they know this number is bigger than the other. So some students come into the classroom telling me, oh, they can count up to 30. And then when I ask them, okay, which number is bigger? Is it 17 or is it 12? They may not actually recognize that 17 has a greater value than 12. So the whole process of counting things one by one is something that they have to go through before they develop that number fluency. And then moving on, at 4 years old, they are also able to compare items, things like more, fewer, equal, through the use of grids, through counting as well. And they also develop interest in writing. So one of the numbers that I really love to teach is 5. So I call it the number with a head, neck, and a big tummy. Okay, so every time when they don't know how to write 5, I'll say, just try it. It's just a number with a big tummy. And then I have one of my 4-year-olds saying, oh, only my yeye has big tummy. Okay. So I think that's quite hilarious because the way they are able to associate numbers to actual life, I think that makes writing, practicing a little bit more interesting. Now, moving on to K1, you can see that they are now able to recognize numbers and count numbers all the way up to 20. And I think it's important to note that they can count forward and backward from various starting points. So they can do 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, rather than starting from 20 or 10. K1 is also where we lay the groundwork for addition and subtraction, where they learn to combine and separate items through the part-whole diagram, which is something that they were exposed to in N2 through Rolly the robot. They also deepen their understanding of comparison concepts like more, less, greater than, and fewer than. So in this journal, you will see that we are moving away from pictorial diagrams. So in N2, it's very picture heavy. In K1, as they develop that fluency, learners have to understand the abstract, which is the numbers alone, to actually complete this question. Now, another aspect which parents often neglect, I would say, is the spatial awareness aspect. So when we talk about math, we also talk about things like symmetry, mapping activities through the use of rows and columns. So the game that we played earlier on, looking at spots in the different rows and columns, is actually a great way to teach children spatial development, especially when it comes to knowing the left, the right, the top, and the bottom, and then transferring the same skill to the reading of coordinates. So now, as we move on to K2, you will realize that the activities are much more advanced as they build upon the skills they acquire in K1. So in K2s now, they usually develop mastery up to 40. So they should be very, very comfortable with working with numbers up to 40. In our journals, we typically extend their learning all the way up to 100 because they are able to recognize the same pattern in counting and the changes in tens and ones as they count on to 100. Okay, so sometimes we also extend their learning through skip counting in 2s, 5, and 10, both forward and backward. So this builds on their understanding of addition and subtraction, but they have to develop strategies to solve simple problems. So if they see this journal, they need to figure out, are we adding 2? Are we subtracting 2? Are we counting forward and backward? These are all the logical reasoning skills that we want them to develop at K2. Okay, and they also develop strategies to count, be it through drawing, the number line, or also fingers. And over here, we see a heuristic, which is the part-whole bar model. This is something that we focus on to help students actually see and visualize better. So this heuristic mirrors the P1 curriculum as well, because they need to develop the fine motor skills for very precise and accurate drawing. So they learn to analyze and solve math problems using different strategies. Okay, and then lastly here, we have spatial awareness skills. So we further develop their skills through activities like constructing aligned, deconstructing shapes. So if you look at this figure, you need to figure out what are the different shapes you see here. And you observe it carefully because of the curved lines or the straight lines that you see. And then you match it to the properties of the shapes that you have learned in the classroom. So with stronger spatial awareness, we can explore mental calculations. So some parents tend to ask the teachers at K2, when can my kid actually add and subtract without using their fingers? Okay, so the skill of visualization is only developed when they hit 7 years old. So anything before 7, it can actually be a challenge for the child. So referring back to what we did earlier on, which is the subitizing skill, where they can visualize numbers through dots. This is a very good way for children to build number sense. For example, visualizing 8 plus 3 through the movement of dots in a 10 frame. Okay, so I understand that parents are concerned about the transition from K2 to P1. Okay, but it's also important to recognize that number fluency develops gradually, and we have to consistently challenge our learners as they reach the various milestones. Okay, so in K2, students are introduced to word problems, problem-solving strategies such as bar model and grouping, and essential classroom habits like careful reading, checking your answers, and identifying changes in questions. So these components are closely aligned with the P1 curriculum, and it's about instilling all these good habits from a young age. So when we start them young, we also prepare them to manage larger workload as they progress into P1. So it is important to acquire knowledge, but it's also important to develop the skills like perseverance, mindfulness, and also precision. Yeah. Okay, Natasha.
Okay, so that was very well said about the perseverance and resilience point of view. Yeah, I think I really agree with that as well. Okay, so for literacy milestones, I am just going to talk about reading and writing because that's mostly what parents ask me about. Okay.
Oops. Okay.
Yeah. So for reading and writing, for N2, K1s, and K2s, let me just talk you through about what is expected of them and also what we do in our classroom. Again, expected, let's keep in mind that every child develops and learns at different speeds and at different times. Okay. For nursery 2 4-year-old students, they start to recognize letter shape and letter sound. Okay, so what happens here is that they see this over here. They are able to say that, oh, that is letter S. They can tell me the name. And they also start to make that corresponding letter S sound. They realize that, oh, every letter has a sound. So they will say that letter S says S. Okay, so they start to make that connection. At N2H, they are also starting to develop this understanding that words are made up of sounds. And at this stage, they are able to pick out the beginning letter sounds in words. So over here, you can see that they are actually looking for the beginning letter E sound. Okay, just give me a second. Yeah, okay, so they're looking for the sound in the words. All right, and at K1, they start to develop greater phonemic awareness. So not just about being able to pick out the beginning sound, they can pick out the middle sound as well, and also the ending sound. All right, so this journal page over here, what students are doing, they're actually trying to listen out for the short vowel ah sound in the middle of the word. All right, so it starts to get slightly harder. And a bulk of our K1 curriculum and the skills that students develop at this age is to blend. Okay, so this is something that a lot of parents ask, oh, my child can't read. Okay, this is where you need to start. You need to start them with blending at this age group. Okay, so it's about putting letter sounds together to form a word. And at this age, practice makes perfect. You got to keep trying, getting them to practice this technique to get them to read. Okay, one thing that I tell parents that sometimes helps is starting with 2-letter words, because obviously 2 letters easier to blend than 3 letters. Another thing is to start with letter sounds that are more continuous. So for example, s is more continuous than p. So perhaps start with words that start with s, and then you can put 2 sounds together easily. Okay. For K2 students, you know, they are starting to get much more independent in their reading. And this is because they start to build competency in many different phonics concepts. They begin to learn things like vowel teams. They begin to learn things like the magic silent E, and they build up a bank of sight words that they recognize as well. So what happens? They start to be able to read sentences on their own. Okay, so this is an example of the vowel teams E, the long vowel E vowel teams, and then we get them to read a sentence at the end as well, just to develop on their skills. Okay, just as a side note, yeah. So you know, we talked about parents really always asking how can I get my child to love reading. So every week in our classes, we actually we read a storybook with them, and then to develop on their comprehension and their story recall skills, we actually do a corresponding story recall and comprehension exercise based on the storybook that we've read. Okay. For N2s with regards to writing, okay, at this age, you know, they start to develop some sort of scribbling habits. Yeah, so they start to want to engage with writing tools like their crayons, their pencils, their color pencils, and things like that. In our classroom, you know, we're very aware that fine motor skills are still developing. So how do we teach students about letter shape? We provide them with craft materials like pipe cleaners, Play-Doh, to teach them how to form the letter shapes and to teach them the correct letter strokes as well. Okay, and this is just a side note. So nursery 2 students, usually they hold pencils like that, right? With their fist. Sometimes they might hold it like this. Correct. Okay. So to help students learn the correct pencil grip, what I tell parents is to get something small, get something soft, and get them to put it against their palm over here, and then to press down on that small little object with their 3 fingers. And then with their remaining 2 fingers, hold the pencil like that. Okay, so it really helps to build this muscle over here that they need to hold the pencil properly and to begin tracing. Okay, so this is something that you can try out at home with your 4 or 5-year-olds if they're struggling to work on their pencil grip. All right, for K1s, starting to write a bit more, starting to trace a little bit more independently as well. Okay, so we have some structured writing exercises in our classes. They look like this. Provide them with a variety of tracing of the sight words and to write independently their own chosen answers. Okay, so if you take a look at the writing exercise, you will see that we have this 3-line grid. All right, and you know how Miss Phoebe talked about tapping on their imaginative mind? Yeah, so something that I do in the classroom to teach them about letter placement is to tell them that the bottom line is grass, the middle line is trees, and the top line is the sky, and then below the bottom line is the ocean. Okay, then I will tell them a story. I'll tell them, okay, everybody, your letters need to sit on the grass. Okay, they need to have a picnic on the grass. They can't be flying up into the sky. Otherwise, you know, the birds will eat them or something like that. Okay, so then the students will always repeat it to me, you know, or if they are writing upwards, then they'll say, oh no, the bird is going to eat my letters, things like that. Okay, so that's step number 1 into getting them to write their letters on the line. Okay, it also teaches them about letter shape. So certain letters like letter G, letter J, letter P, the lowercase letters, they actually go below the bottom line, right? So what I tell students to do is that, okay, letter G needs to go fishing in the ocean, so that they are very aware that their letter G needs to go down below the bottom line. Okay, so it's all about making it really fun and accessible for younger students to understand what you're talking about. Okay. Another thing that actually really helps, you know, we talk about visual learners as well. If they don't want to hear all this mumbo jumbo story about the grass and the trees and the sky, then, you know, just highlight that bottom line for them so it's very visible to them that all their letters need to be sitting on that line. Yeah, so these are just certain strategies that you can use at home as well if you are trying to train your child to write and to write neatly. Okay, as they move on to K2, again, they start to write a little bit more independently. They have all this prior knowledge of phonics rules, phonics concepts that they can apply to help them spell. They have a bank of sight words that they know how to read, recognize, and spell. Then they can form their own sentences. Okay, so K2, again, we are very aware that, we're preparing them for primary one at this age. So we do try to model what we do for writing exercises to look like what you will see in primary one. So over here, you have one picture, some helping words, and then we start to introduce things like 5 W's, 1 H to them to help them form and plan their stories. Okay, and then later on in the year, we start to build up their writing techniques as well. So teaching them things like show, not tell to describe feelings, sensory language to describe their setting as well. Okay, and just one last point about K2 and preparing them for primary one. So this is another component that we do in class, reading comprehension. So as we said earlier, they can read a bit more independently. We start to do these comprehension exercises, and now they are reading to answer questions. Okay, so we teach them how to look for clues inside the passages, okay, and then we teach them how to answer the questions as well. So again, model after primary one so that we can prepare them and smoothen the transition. Okay, yeah, that's all from me.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Asha. Okay, I know there are 2 questions being asked. We will answer these questions, but because we are running short of time, please be a little patient. We will type in our answers, so please hang on. Don't exit yet, because we will give you a response. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. If there are any other questions, really quickly, you can just put it in the Q&A, and then we will answer them. Right. But of course, we'll do it privately. Okay. Right. Let's talk about what's next for you. Right, okay, so it was very informative, this talk. I'm sure you guys have learned quite a bit, right? Now, to actually experience what we've been talking about, okay, Eton Academy has actually come up with quite a few things for your children. For starting this weekend and extending into the June holidays as well. So let me talk about the June holidays first. There are a few camps which we are running, right? We have our P1 and P2 Math Olympiad. We have our young scientists, okay, for the very young kids or the N2s, right, all the way up to the P2s. Yeah, and then we also have our Chinese speech and drama and Mandarin art camps as well. Now, these camps run over 2 days. So if you don't know what you can get your kids involved in this June holidays, please scan the QR code over there to find out more. Yeah. And if you have older kids who are doing the PSLE this year, all right, we also have our PSLE success camps that are running, and that runs over 3 days. So again, all that information, if you just scan the QR code, you will be able to find that information online. All right. And okay, now talking about early years, okay, we have something really exciting coming up as well. Okay, we have our experience day at Great World, and actually this is happening this weekend. Okay, so Saturday and Sunday, all right, 18, 19 May, from 11 a.m. all the way to 5 p.m. Okay, this is happening at our Great World City branch. Okay, so please come down. All right, you want to go there, experience what it's like. We have a wonderful classroom, right, where you can see how the children actually learn. Right, I think Ms. Natasha mentioned about the different types of learners. We actually have stimuli and things like that in the room to cater to our different types of learners. Okay, so it's a bit hard for me to tell you about it. It's better if you come and experience it yourself. Okay, so please come down if you're able to. All right. Even if you're not able to, try. Okay. All right. On Saturday, you will see Miss Natasha and Miss Phoebe at Great Wall. Okay, I believe. And on Sunday, if you come down on Sunday, you will see Miss Natasha there, and you can see them in action. Actually, you know. All right. So yeah, let's see if they really walk their talk, right? And I thought they really do. They really do. All right. Okay. So at the end, there's a QR code there. Please scan to register. All right, and you can all the details are online as well.